Next point on our agenda is discussion with Madame Stefania Giannini, Italian Minister for Education, Universities and Research, representing Presidency of the Council of the European Union. And let me say a few words. Madame Stefania Giannini was graduated from universities of Pisa and Pavia, also became full professor in the universities, so with big academic experiences. And she was also the rector of the University for Foreigners of Perugia, and generally speaking served in the fields of education, cultural promotion, also as a president of the Study Commission for Research Ethics and Bioethics of the Italian National Research Council, being also the representative of the Conference of Rectors of Italian Universities for International Relations. A lot of awards, medals. I have a list, a very long one. And she was elected member of the Senate in 2013 and was head of the 7th Senate Commission for Public Education and Cultural Heritage. Our topic is, of course, representation of Italian presidency in a very important field, research, innovation, new technologies, and contacting our industrial and academia communities. If I may ask you, Madam Minister, for taking the floor.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, also for your very kind presentation. I decided to offer my speech in Italian, considering the role and the current position I have. Signor Presidente.
Chairman, Vice Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it really is a great honour and privilege to be with you today before this committee, and I'd like to thank you for the time set aside for me to set out the priorities of the Italian presidency in research, innovation and space. We are aware of the responsibilities incumbent on Italy holding the presidency in this time, and two circumstances I believe are particularly important here. Firstly, the presidency coincides with the beginning of the new programming period for the structural funds and the Horizon 2020 programme. Our country is given the responsibility and therefore opportunity to set out the strategic outlines of research and innovation, speaking for Parliament and the Commission at an important time, looking at the priorities and the key points of this programme, which is going to be important if our continent is to grow and progress. The second circumstance is leading through the time of transition from the old Commission to the new Commission, and also at a time when the European Parliament has changed. Our job, our responsibility, is that we have to work with resolve and commitment in very close cooperation with the European Parliament and this particular committee, not just now, but from this time on. And it's not just me, but the whole Italian presidency that strongly believes that the current situation of crisis is a transitional phenomenon. But it's more than that. It's a period of paradigm shift more than a transition. And that's what we've got to note economically, socially and culturally. And it doesn't just affect Europe. And we're also convinced that significant investment in research and training can be a fundamental way of tackling and overcoming this paradigm shift by responding in the appropriate way to new problems. And on that note, we welcome with great interest the plan for an investment programme from the President-designate of the Commission, Mr. Juncker. Two areas, research and training, have a key role to play. In research, we're talking about investing, clear guidelines, making Europe more competitive, giving it sound infrastructure which will make it a hub for innovation and technological transfer. When it comes to training, it may be a commonplace to say it, but turning word into deed is a different thing. We have to make European society better educated, better qualified in such a way that our young people will have the necessary professional skills for the challenges facing them. So the cornerstones of the presidency programme are linked to that overview, and I can repeat them. Maybe you're all well aware of them. Firstly, growth and jobs, that's the first thing. Secondly, a space of freedom and security so that citizens' rights can be fully enjoyed. And then thirdly, a stronger, more strategic role for Europe in the world. So in drafting the priorities for research and innovation, I can say that our programme has naturally drawn from that set of cornerstone priorities. A very important topic, research infrastructure, is one where we had an informal meeting in July of research ministers on the 22nd of July, and in that meeting we focused our attention on political convergence and cultural convergence on the three main infrastructure questions, which is strategic programming, the role of the European Strategic Forum on Research Infrastructures, which is the fulcrum of programming activities and sets out the priorities for that infrastructure, and then the optimum use, the optimization of national and European resources. This involves identifying those mechanisms which really can promote and fund excellence and talent. And lastly, but not least, the long-term sustainability question. We want an open approach for infrastructure for society so that productive parts of society can really get in on the act. In the next 4 months, in the two councils of ministers of research to be held on the 26th of September and the 5th of December, we'll be focusing mainly on those issues. And our intention is that we build on the September political debate in the Council with a view to the conclusions which may be adopted in the December Council by focusing on research and innovation as a source of jobs and growth in qualitative and quantitative terms. That's what Europe really needs. And this all comes on the basis of the Commission communication on this very topic. All this comes against the backdrop, ladies and gentlemen, of research and innovation being a fundamental instrument. Our productive apparatus will be able to move to a smarter specialisation format in a sustainable way and an inclusive way based on research and innovation. So these are three buzzwords that I really think that we need to emphasise: smart, sustainable, inclusive. And in that context, we must be concerned to review the European 2020 strategy, which began in January 2015, and the presidency will give it the necessary attention. The main aspects, the specific aspects, are the nexus of different factors that come together with research and innovation. We need to improve it to ensure that the innovation ecosystem is more effective. We need to look at how national research systems and European research systems interface and interact. This has to look at the national research action plans and the challenges of the 2020 programme, and the fundamental issue of getting genuine mobility of researchers and talent in Europe. And lastly, we have to look at how to incentivise research and innovation by bringing together public and private research. So the public-private model needs a fresh look and implementation. And I'm thinking of the good practice in the joint technology initiatives which were launched on the 9th of July, and I was honoured to be here with Commissioner Geoghegan-Quinn at that occasion. That's one of the assets we can draw on. We also need to consolidate the political consensus to ensure that all these ideas really get off the ground in Europe over the next few years, and that means that we need to look at the geopolitical situation we're in. That's another priority for the Italian presidency, and that's the relaunch of a major strategic partnership initiative with the countries of the Mediterranean. In that connection, we are building on the excellent results achieved by the Greek presidency, and here we intend to get back off the ground a programme called Partnership in Research and Innovation in the Mediterranean Area, PRIMA for short. And the aim of it is to build up in two fundamental areas, water and food, a model which is going to be part of food safety, which will bring together research institutes in a strategic framework on both sides of the Mediterranean. And at the Council on 26th of September, we intend to prepare the debate there with a view to conclusions at the December Council. And that will lead to a new joint programme pursuant to Article 185 of the Treaty. And colleagues, I would really call for your support here, because that's going to be fundamental. The role of the Parliament is going to be fundamental given the strategic impact and the potential outcome of this programme given its geopolitical dimension, building up a particular type of research infrastructure. The European Parliament is a co-legislator and will therefore have a decisive role to play in adopting this important initiative, a science diplomacy asset, as we'd say in the jargon. In the Mediterranean still, we set great store by the development of maritime activities and what's known as blue growth. The presidency is working on that. It involves a number of countries, those which have a Mediterranean shore, but not just those, and it will have a big impact in terms of the development of a more solid, flourishing situation in the Mediterranean basin. And there are three events which will be set aside to give some consideration to this topic. The conference that we'll be holding in Rome from the 7th to 9th of October, Eurocian, and then in Turin on the 8th and 9th of October we'll be looking at bioeconomics, and then lastly on the 3rd of November in Naples we'll be looking at the challenges faced by the Mediterranean in terms of internal and maritime water bodies. The third priority for the presidency is the increasingly necessary and natural link between science and society. Society needs science and it's ready to take it. And so the scientific world needs to open up and break down some of the barriers which I think in the past have been an obstacle rather than an interface. And so we've scheduled some discussion in the Council on the 5th of December to look at how this connection between science and society can happen. and we hope for some very clear pointers for Commission policy there. The things that I wanted to talk to you about in this connection have to do with smart communities, making the most of cultural heritage, the scalability of social innovation, both in the technological and scientific senses, and lastly, the financing of such innovation, which is very important if we're to talk about innovative financing. And then in Rome, we'll be holding a conference to look at how science can work with and for society, and that's something that we'll be looking at on the 19th and 21st of November in Rome. And I'd like to welcome you all most warmly to these events. I think the committee might find it very interesting to be directly present at some of those events. So, all that said, colleagues, I think that we can achieve something here, but only if we can create a European research area where we'll be successful. That's something that we started working on. That's a fundamental part of the Europe 2020 strategy. This European area will be crucial to make the most of human resources for research in Europe, to build on European researchers and to build up ideas in a way that they can be shared as a joint heritage. And in that connection, I would also like briefly and simply just to mention a few of the buzzwords which I am sure will be well known to you and dear to you, namely mobility of researchers, recruitment of researchers on the basis of shared and transparent and open rules, and cooperation across borders to make a situation in which member state policies and European policies can work together properly. And that's why we have to work so hard on the national plans for research in our countries. A year ago, in 2013, an important document was presented to Parliament, and Mr. Giannini and Luigi Berlinguer and Mrs. Sartori worked hard on it, and it's the Masters for Research, and I think that's a fundamental way of achieving some progress here. And the 18th and 19th of November we'll be organising a conference promoting excellence in science, and I think that's a way in which mobility and recruitment will be enhanced. This idea is that stakeholders, which are the fundamental players in society, will really come forward. Business and so on can all be on board. It's an opportunity for us to see them involved in creating a free market for labour in this field. That's one of the things we're aiming to achieve in this connection. But we don't want things just to look good. We don't want everything to look good academically or to be abstract rather than concrete. And that might happen if we don't work on some hard and fast measures which will really support the policy direction that we're setting out. And the first point is alignment of national programmes with the strategic agenda that was agreed at a European Union level. This is a way of tackling the major challenges such as the ageing of the population, climate change, major immigration flows, international mobility, and we absolutely have to see a link up between national efforts and European efforts made by Commission and Parliament. Clearly these challenges cannot be borne alone. There are some often tragic examples of how that is the case in national situations. So I think that the presidency will be able to promote an exchange of views based on the factors I've discussed in September with a view to adopting some Council conclusions in December. In the 2 or 3 minutes I have available of my time, I'd just like to turn briefly to some of the issues raised by the last topic, but not the least topic in our priorities, which is aerospace research. And this is one of the sectors where the progress of Europe really is in the balance, and its international competitiveness likewise. I think by trying to achieve a common strategy and working across member states, both in terms of politics and research, we can really help ourselves achieve the objectives of the European 2020 strategy. We have to admit that we haven't made the progress in that strategy that we would have hoped for. Space is very directly linked to one of the major financing initiatives, which is the 2020 horizon, which is set aside for this sector. The Italian presidency is going to place great emphasis on some of the specific issues that I want to briefly mention here. Firstly, we want to see a strengthening of the strategy for Eurospace policy and its funding. We want to look in particular at how investment can be financed. But there are also some very specific issues that need to be looked at. I think about 12 billion euros, including the Galileo and EGNOS funding and Copernicus funding, will be in play. So what we are looking at is an unprecedented increase in funding, but that means that we have economic and research responsibilities to bear in Parliament and the Commission. Our intention as an Italian presidency is to advance negotiations on the identification and dissemination of geo data from spatial observation, and we think it's strategically important that we are independent in the data that we survey and the use of the data for not solely defence purposes, so military purposes, but also looking at civil society applications, a dual model that we believe in Italy is an important. Cosmos SkyMed is a demonstration of that. So we're looking ahead to December Council conclusions with a view to the European Space Agency, which is the strategic body for the implementation of the policies that I have mentioned. So we would like to launch a debate jointly with the ESA, and we would like to define the way in which EU policy and the ESA interface. I think as a presidency in office, we have a genuine opportunity now to set out our stall, to say exactly how our action will shape up, and to do so persuasively. Another point I'd like to mention is on the 18th of September in Rome, the Italian Space Agency will be hosting a Copernicus program event, and that's very important in terms of basic research in the field of space. A last point, which is a transport minister's competence, which also includes energy and telecommunications. The Italian presidency is keen to see that Galileo satellite navigation can be a success. As you know, there was an unfortunate event a few days ago, but we share the hope expressed by Nelly Froce, the Commissioner, that everything will continue according to plan, and we are going to carefully examine the background to the unfortunate event underway. So to conclude on that remark, and I do hope that these issues will rise up the political agenda in Europe.
For your presentation, Madam, for presentation of Italian presidency in research, innovation, space. We voted our annual budget for the next year, our annual budget amendments, and for more financing of research, innovation as SMEs this morning. So we take care about these fields. Now we go to interventions by our coordinators. Mr. Karinch on behalf of EPP.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Madam Giannini, for a very interesting and detailed explication of your presidency's goals. During the past 2 days in this committee, we have been, I suppose you could say, broadly discussing competitiveness, European competitiveness. So we have looked at the telecoms industry, the digital agenda. We have discussed energy matters. We have talked a lot about industry and the importance of reindustrializing Europe to regain our competitiveness in that area. We talked about the directive of Earth observation satellite data for commercial purposes and how that can help. And as Mr. Buzek pointed out, we voted this morning on the 2015 budget, where we noted with great disdain that many member states, shall we say the majority of member states, have been reducing the funds needed, especially for the research programs, which will, in the end, as I agree with you strongly, that's a cornerstone of increasing Europe's competitiveness. So my question to you is actually quite simple, maybe not such a simple answer. You mentioned that the move to Horizon 2020 is really like a paradigm shift. It's a completely new way of thinking. Parliament, this committee, we are very committed to this program. We worked on the legislation for 2 or 3 years. I guess it was quite a while. My question is to you is, what are, in your view, the biggest challenges right now to the changeover to the new Horizon 2020? Is it just thinking? Is it practical? Is there lots of resistance to it? And what steps is your presidency taking and will be taking to overcome these so that we can get as smooth a possible start to this, keeping Europe's competitiveness in mind? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Następnym mówcą będzie pan.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Grybarczyk on behalf of the ECR group.
Madam Minister, is very briefly, you highlight a very interesting presentation. You said a very interesting presentation about the high technology research system, cooperation between countries, but you didn't mention about the education young people and what is the solution for the young people to high rate of unemployment, the biggest problem in Europe. What to do to integrate the people, to change the present situation with the young people without the future. About the future now. I think the education, that's the clue, that's the solution of this. What do you think about this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. De Backer on behalf of ALDE.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Madam Minister. I think you have given a very enthusiastic overview of your many priorities that you still see in front of you for the next couple of months. Maybe starting where the previous questions have left off, in a sense that today on the very stringent budgetary situations of many member states, of course, you see that investment in research and development has declined in many member states, and we are far or further away from the 3% target where we have set ourselves a couple of years ago. Do you see any steps or any incentives that can be taken also in coordination, for example, within the European semester and other initiatives that have been taken in order to reach faster this 3%? Another question is, of course, Horizon 2020. We know the previous debate that we had here in this Parliament and the amount of money that has been allocated to this. One of the key priorities in this was not only to have a very focused and a smart specialization, but also to make it easier for researchers and companies, especially SMEs, to have access to these funds. Commissioner Quinn has made a very strong action point out of this. My question to you is, how will this be followed up? How will, during the implementation, make sure that both the financing and the co-financing at member state level are made less complex and easier accessible, especially for smaller companies and also research institutions who have a lot of expertise to share within these kind of programs? And the last question for me would be about valorization. You also mentioned this yourself. Research for the research's sake is not enough. You need to be taken up into the market, being developed by companies and commercialized. There I think you see a huge gap within the European Union compared to other member states outside or states outside the European Union. Are there any initiatives planned there, discussions, thoughts? Maybe that also will be helpful to make sure that these new research and these innovations are being taken up by the market. Also making use of, and I know your country is a little bit exempt on this, of the European patent system, which I think might be helpful in commercializing some new tools. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your intervention. And on behalf of GUE, Mr. Eshenik.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. Minister, as you know, the Council proposed on the 24th of July major cuts in the budget for Horizon 2020. You've used words such as intelligence, sustainability, competitiveness, perhaps to justify these cuts. However, it is estimated that the 7th framework program has converted each euro invested into 7 to 14 euros in added value. So that leads to 1 million new jobs and 1.1% increase in export with just a minor investment. So for this reason, I don't really understand why, and I do think it's dangerous and unacceptable what the Council has proposed. And for this reason, I'm asking, do you agree, Minister, to this giving up of our position as an innovative continent? Yes or no is an answer. Does the Italian presidency approve of these cuts? Yes or no?
EFDD, Mr. Dario Tamburano.
Gentile Ministro Giannini.
Minister Giannini, well, we all know that the funding in the area of education and research is very special. The scale and quality of these sectors are absolutely essential in building prosperity and a future for the country. It's important for creating a genuine democracy. Luigi Einaudi, one of the founding fathers of our republic, said precisely this. But we're in a place where, in a situation where the parents of school pupils have to buy the toilet paper for the school. The buildings are in an absolutely shocking state. Now, basically, it seems that the Troika, the ECB, the IMF already seem to be operative. I mean, you've seen what they've done in Greece, Portugal, Cyprus. It seems that they seem to be having quite an impact on research and technology and education.
3 interventions. Mr. Telička.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Minister, thank you for a very detailed presentation, a lot of enthusiasm, and I wish you good luck. I would have one question related to a point that you have touched upon, and that is the review of Strategy 2020, which is, so to say, behind the door. I would be interested to know how would you, as the presidency, you yourself, perceive such a review? If I were to be blunt, I would say that the biggest deficiency for me of Strategy 2020 is that it is a sort of a document, nearly a shopping list. When negotiated and agreed upon, everyone had to be happy. So it meant that basically the list contains everything. There is little prioritization. So that's just leaving with you my view on that, and maybe asking you what you would make of it, and what would be your expectation. And the other side of the same coin is we have spoken a lot of innovation, commercialization, and so on. The difficulty that I have with EU spending on innovation is that we do not measure it. Years ago, when I had a little bit more hair than I have today, together with former Finnish Prime Minister Esko Aho, we've been evaluating some EU programs. And the feeling that I got out of it was that what we need to do is spend the money totally and have no problems, no scandals, no bribes, and so on. But in reality, it was not measured, and I think it is still not measured in majority of the programs, what really leads to innovation. So can we introduce that element of measuring what innovation really is, whether we have achieved the goal with the funds that we have invested, and would that be a part of the review of 2020 in your concrete sphere of responsibility? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Borelli.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Minister Giannini, well, before you spoke in this room, we were talking about competition. Some of the people in the room were saying that there was unfair competition out there. Well, of course, I think the problem here is that there will always be somebody who produces the same products that we produce for a couple of cents less. There will always be countries that are poorer than our own. So the problem we face is keeping the know-how in Europe, but not necessarily production. I think that's going to have to be the trick that we succeed in doing. Well, development means education and training. Well, when we think about schools, we think about students who are going off to do work experience placements in companies. But I think that you have to consider that companies should also go to school. We need to be training the companies for the skills that they need too. There's also a lot of know-how that a lot of countries have, know-how in industrial processes or in crafts. I think that this could be a key to the recovery. Now, there's a European Round Table, which is a multinational lobby that's quite a frequent visitor here in Brussels. Now, why are we tying education so closely to the interests of the multinationals?
For your intervention. And, Madam Minister, if I could ask you for the round of answers. And, well, last statement from your side.
Okay. At the end of the answer, I try to do. Well, starting from the question put on the desk by Mr. Karins, I'm grateful for your question because it's a general one, but it focuses on a very important issue, in my opinion, which is how can we, if I understand well your thought, how can we make Horizon 2020 a real effective tool to improve competitiveness? How can we do to make this big project a very effective one, not only for academies and universities, not only for companies, not only for member states, but for the, generally speaking, for the total society of Europe. Well, I see two big challenges we have in our agenda. The first one is try to make really interdisciplinary the project. You know that Horizon 2020 faces the so-called big challenges which has to do with the future of our society the aging society problem, the climate change, the migrations, which is not a national problem but is an European problem, and many others questions, you know. So I think that to be very interdisciplinary and at national level, then it means try to improve, try to encourage the national research programs which are naturally interdisciplinary. This is the first tool I see on my agenda, also as a national minister in Italy. And the second question, in my opinion, to combine to your question, basically, is how can we better connect the public and private sectors which can cooperate together to face these challenges and try to put together the energies they can produce in their domains. I think that this could be a general framework we can move inside. This is the question for some aspects which also another honourable colleague you put to my attention, and if I see well, is Mr. De Backer, where is? Thank you. And one of your three different sub-questions is in the same direction that I mentioned, trying to answer Mr. Karins. As far as it concerns the huge gap we have, we actually have between Europe and other big players, which are very active more and more in the world outside of Europe, I think that another very important topic will be in our agenda, but also for the future of the next Commission and the next your Parliament, will be to combine and to compare the project of the big programs of European programs with the international ones, and try to improve the mechanisms we have to attract international talents, international intelligences, new researchers also coming from other countries. This is one of the very concrete tools we have, and we can maybe better than we did in the past use for the objective you mentioned, you indicated. As far as it concerns the second question by Mr. Gribacil, is it correct? Thank you. Well, oh, great education. How can't I totally agree with you. I didn't mention education. I didn't dedicate some words especially to this dossier, because this is another competence I will discuss in a couple of days in this building with the other committee. But if I can just profit of your benefit of your question, I think that research, innovation and education are the same different faces of the same kind. So I think that we must really invest our projects and our new models also in the field of education. And this is the answer also for the dramatic problem we have, which is unemployment, especially for young people. And sorry, yes, rispondo in italiano.
Well, I'll respond in Italian to some of the other questions. Now, Mr. Robber, first of all. Well, you talk about the budget cuts, whether it's a mistake or not. Well, obviously, in my role as presidency, of course we have to be neutral with regard to the decisions that are taken. They're the result of long and painstaking negotiations. So maybe if you asked me that question in another capacity as Minister of Research, well, as Mr. Buzek kindly mentioned, of course, as I'm a researcher myself, I do feel that it's very important to be investing a significant quantity of resources in the sector. Well, we have Mr. Tamburano and Mr. Borelli. Well, education is a strategic asset, of course it is. And it must increasingly be so in all countries of the EU. Well, there are Italian issues there which I would discuss at a different forum. But I think it's very significant that the two budgetary lines that have actually been increased, well, unfortunately there have been quite a number of cutbacks, but the only two that are being increased are Horizon 2020 on research and innovation and Erasmus+, which of course is one single policy from within the area of education. So I think that that's a response to the concerns of the Parliament. Now, Mr. Borelli, you talked about the schools and training. You're asking me what tools can we use to prevent there being some kind of hegemony of large multinational groups that are strong lobbies, of course. Well, honestly, I believe that proposing a correct model of co-financing, public and private co-financing, that is. I mean, things like the joint technology initiatives, they've got 50-50 co-financing. So the Commission is earmarking 12 billion for that. I think that is quite an important response. The speaker's microphone has gone off.
Mi ha sentito? Sì.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Now that is one model of public-private cooperation that can be kept under good control.
By Mr. Talichka, which is about, if I understand well your thought and your position, eventually a good measuring of innovation. How you say, how can we measure the results of innovation too, beyond the list of priorities? We know very well which are our priorities, not only in this semester, but generally speaking, when we talk about these topics in Europe. But I think that that we do have, as in the field of research, already applied good instruments of measuring the results of innovation, and I think that we can apply the same model. I mean, when you have some international committee which can evaluate on the basis of international benchmarks what a group of research and a company together can produce, and which is the right combination between the coincidence between the project, the strategy described in a research project, and the results of the project itself. This is a good way to measure and to have not much more than a rough idea of what innovation means for the development of European society. I think sorry? Yeah, okay, sorry, I noticed, but I thought, yes, I already mentioned in my speech how, to what extent is a priority for the Italian presidency try to review in a short time the Europe Strategy 2020. The basic focus will be on the combination, the real combination between national strategies and the national plans of research and the European framework, not only Horizon 2020, but also the structural funds, which also indicate very, very important guidelines, and they also offer a huge quantity of money for the cohesion, social innovation, and all the other topics I tried to mention during my speech.
Well, thank you very much, Madam, for your answers and also for the discussion with our committee. We wish you all the best for the next 4 months.
Thank you.
Not very long period, a lot of things to do, and we are certainly, as each committee, responsible for research, innovation, space, looking forward to working in close relation with the Italian presidency. And I think that it is very important that we take attention for financing all the field you represent here in our discussion in our committee and also in Italian presidency. Thank you very much for spending time with us and for all your answers and interventions. Thank you very much, Madam. All the best for the future. Well, thank you.